Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I'm joined by Dr. Colby Sousa, a researcher, coach, and competitive strength athlete who earned his PhD in sport exercise science under the guidance of none other than Dr. Eric Helms. With experience working alongside top minds like Mike Zourdos, Colby has been at the forefront of research on hypertrophy, strength, and importantly, the practical application in the gym. In this episode, we dive into his personal journey from overcoming being overweight as a child to this year stepping on stage as a bodybuilder. We also break down some of his most fascinating research, including how the size of a calorie surplus impacts muscle growth. And of course, we nerd out on some anime and its surprising parallels to training. As a reminder, guys, here at Revive Stronger, we pride ourselves on providing really quality, individualized, and personal coaching. What I mean by that is it's online and it's really easy to lose that personal touch, to lose the true individualization of coaching, which I think truly sets Revive Stronger apart, is that we manage to hold on to that through our video check-ins and the like, and we cap ourselves at a certain number of clients so we aren't working with hundreds of people and you aren't just another number to us. So if you are interested in truly being taken care of and truly coached in my eyes, then definitely check out our coaching, see if it's for you, and you can always apply for a consultation and we can have a chat about how we might be able to help you, whether or not that's stepping on a bodybuilding stage, doing a photo shoot, or just looking and feeling better and also learning along the way. That's what we love to do, is teach along the way too, so it's you get to know the hows and the whys. Anyway, this episode is packed with insight, so let's get into it. So Colby, you were overweight as a child. I actually often find people, for whatever reason, in the fitness industry, it seems to be either extremes. They were very, very skinny and bullied and scrawny, and so they wanted to build up their confidence through the gym, or they were kind of quite overweight. So their nutrition was more so what they found first to kind of help with body weight and that sort of thing. So I'd love to hear about your initial experience kind of with nutrition, with gym, with training, and we can take it from there.
Yeah. So growing up, I wasn't really active. I just preferred playing video games and not being outside or doing sports. I tried different sports, just didn't really like it. So for me, it was just ended up being the norm, right? I would just be after school, come home, hop on the SNES and play some Super Mario and just kind of do that for the rest of the day. So obviously through that and just being, inactive, started to gain weight. And I just liked food as well. So it was kind of that, cycle where I just eat food, not do stuff, and it started to happen. And yeah, I think the first time I started to want to change was when I was, I was like, okay, I'm kind of overweight. I should probably do something. I was getting kind of bullied as well at school, for being overweight. So that didn't feel good. But I, seeing on the TV, watching American football, seeing these big guys and, being like, hey, they're doing that. I could do that too. So I wanted to sign up for our local Pop Warner junior football team. I signed up, but how they do it here in the States is, there's still a weight limit for the younger divisions because you don't want to be smushing people, right? So still is some limits, so you're not, have too much of a big disadvantage. So I actually missed the weight limit by 20 pounds.
Wow, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so it's because you would think, football that's an advantage, so it should be. But
Yeah.
at some point it could be a disadvantage and be too, unfair. So yeah, it was. I remember just starting off the first couple of days of tryouts. I couldn't even run, not even 50 meters. I would just run out of breath, especially with all the gear on, and that was just tough. So I was just struggling through the actual tryouts itself. And as things are going on, and they're discussing the fact hey, you're going to have to lose weight if you want to play. And they discussed it like that, but a lot of them are saying it was going to be pretty hard to make that 20 pounds in such a short time. So basically getting to the point here, hey, here's something that I can do. I think so. Watching on TV, this is going to be fun. And then being told you can't, it was very devastating. So missing that weight limit, feeling all those feelings, it just kind of got me to the point where, okay, I need to lose the weight. I really want to make the football team. And next year, when this time comes around, I'm going to do that. So that's how I started to get into learning about, nutrition and training and dieting and all that. And like you said, it did start more so with the nutrition because it kind of makes sense. Lose weight, just eat a little bit less. So getting into that, it was difficult because my parents didn't really understand any of that. So for me, I had to go out and learn for myself. But it was back then, the internet wasn't that big. So a lot of my information was men's health magazines, men's fitness magazines. So that was kind of a start. And as we know now, some of the information there is okay, but a lot of it is just, information. But nonetheless, it was there. And also started doing a little bit stuff of learning online. And I'm talking about like some of the old school stuff, like simply shredded cutandjacked.com, like those websites that you haven't heard in a while, and of course bodybuilding.com as well. But basically in that first year it was just learning to be mindful of what I was eating, right? Because I was just eating everything and anything in sight. So I think from there it was just cutting back a little bit on food was helpful, and then come next year around, I did make the team. It was a struggle because we were getting closer. Next couple weeks, like a couple weeks out, I was like, okay, I got like 2-3 pounds. Like, am I gonna make it? And just trying not to eat as much. And again, maybe not the most healthy of ways to do it at first, but I think that was still important to the overarching goal of learning what to do and what not to do. Right. So it brought me into that avenue and that realm of, okay, this is what training and nutrition briefly looks like. And then from there, just kind of got into the football, played that a lot. But it's interesting because I did a lot of things wrong. And looking back, I can say that and laugh. But in the time, I didn't know that the things were wrong, right? Just because it's what I would see. And I didn't understand what research was. I didn't really understand who to believe in. If someone said something in a nice way, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So I'm just going to go with that. So I did it all. So I've done keto in the past. I've done just paleo, all these like fad diets that you think are going to work because the way people explain it, and then you come to find out maybe not the best approach. But I think it was still integral to my journey and me as a person to go through those things and to experience like, okay, I did those, this is what I liked, this is what I didn't like. Maybe this isn't as practical as it can be, and then as you grow with knowledge, understanding, okay, like, probably better ways to do it. So yeah.
I love hearing about your background there. And yeah, it's like the most fundamental thing that I think everyone, like if you're skinny or not, is kind of that energy balance component. Once you solve that, it's such a huge, like, I don't know, that Pareto's law of like the 20% of what you do gets 80% of the results. It's like, that's energy balance right there. So yeah, to miss the weight cap by 20 pounds sounds like you were quite hefty and fairly unfit in that sense. And obviously you've got nicely past that, which is awesome. And yeah, my most embarrassing, I look back at some of the diets I did keto, paleo. I think it's like the blood type diet. I have the book like at home on the bookshelf. I don't know if I even read it. I think I slowly started at that point. I was buying books and like looking for more information. I found the right kind of stumbled upon quote unquote the right information. It depends like where you're coming from. But as far as our listeners are concerned, kind of the evidence-based space where people are interpreting science correctly and not cherry picking and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's great to hear about kind of all of your background there and kind of where you got to do you now still struggle with kind of weight gain, and is weight loss harder for you, or are you now in a place where it's like, hey, once I got my eating behaviors in check and my kind of environment in check, it was a non-issue?
A little bit of both, right? I think it dieting's pretty easy to me because I've done it a lot. So most of the time I understand what it looks like. I understand like hunger cues quite well and how to navigate that. And especially now with just the more experience and knowledge, it's even easier for me, right? Because I have just more tools to work with and it makes it more feasible. So I think there's that. I think I do struggle more often than not being in a controlled gaining phase. Because for me, I'm like, okay, I'm in a gaining phase. I could just eat a little bit more food. And I tend to like food. I like cooking. I love baking. So those things where it makes it easier to be over the calories. And then you're in that space where you're like, yeah, well, I'm supposed to be gaining, so it's okay. So it's easy to fall down that rabbit hole essentially. So I found myself having to navigate that a little bit, but it's that, and then sometimes struggling with dieting in the sense that depending on my environment, right? Because especially if I was at school or I was living with my friends, right, and we're living in a flat, it's just a bunch of other people who track macros, love to bodybuild, they lift weights. It's easy to do so, right? There's not much temptation around. But when I came home, and there's just like a lot more fun foods around and they're in close proximity, and I haven't had them in a while because I was away for 3 years. It was harder to navigate that, right? So I did relearn how to diet in a way with this new environment and go through that and kind of fail in a sense, right? My first round of trying to diet, it didn't go well. I spent too much time and it was like pretty unsuccessful in the amount of weight I wanted to lose. But through that, I learned what to expect, what to look for, what to be mindful of, and got really good at it. Next time around, it was pretty easy. to do so. So it kind of switched with that, but it's just all helpful to continue to build that skill set and that toolbox, like you said. And it's cool. So I'm always grateful for even those instances.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as a coach now, you end up coaching people like you. And because you've gone through that experience and you can get to a position where food doesn't control you, you can control it. But the skill sets and the tools and I don't know, the mindset you have to bring to the table. It's similar with me, whereas I was like the opposite of like, I didn't want to gain weight. I was scared to gain fat. And like going through that, I work with a lot of people like that. So I know how to really help those people. I kind of am them, but
Yeah.
past that. So you're kind of in a similar position. So it's always great to have these kind of skill sets for like develop for ourselves through our own journey. And out of interest, sorry, we're going to jump quite a bit here,
That's
depending
okay.
on
Yeah.
what the journey was like. You ended up working under, people will know, Mike Zourdos, Dr. Mike Zourdos, Dr. Eric Helms. What was that transition? So it was like your initial kind of fat loss, and then, I mean, there's probably a big amount of time here that we're now going to hear about. What happened to get you to working under Dr. Zourdos initially?
Yeah. So basically, like I said, got into football, American football, played that for a while, and then got into soccer. And I was playing basically those two sports. That was my modes of activity and going through that. It wasn't focused necessarily on fat loss to that because, again, just being active, that was what it was. When I was first learning, went through that first dieting phase as a kid getting into the football, I did a little bit of training, but that just took part of just me being in my basement and doing like calisthenics, some push-ups, some mountain climbers, all this stuff that they taught you in football to do, but I just did a little bit more of it at home, trying to go through losing weight. So basically, as I went through the football and soccer, got into high school, still play that, but my senior year of high school is when I was first exposed to the gym itself. So I was doing stuff in my basement, and I was always afraid to go to the gym because I was afraid of what people would say. Even later on, when I wasn't as overweight, still felt like uncomfortable, right? And still felt I was like kind of skinny fat, if you would. So it was just felt uncomfortable, unsure of how to navigate the whole space of the gym. Like I've never been there before. I don't know what to expect, right? And it can be scary if you haven't been in there before. So I was just not sure of what to expect. And at that point, I got a lot more experience through learning. So like that senior year of high school is when things changed the most. It's because it's all right, college is around the corner. You have to pick something to what you want to do. Through my experience, I was like, okay, I want to do something related to exercise science. So let me kind of look at that. But I didn't even know any science, not too much science in that sense. But that's when I started looking more into the YouTube game, right? And seeing what that looks like. And of course, as most people, found Matt Ogus. And then through there, you find Eric Helms. And then that's how you find kind of, what science is in a way. And I just remember, looking at the muscle and strength pyramids videos so many times, taking notes on it. And I was like, okay, this is what real science and education looks like, and it was a huge step from Men's Health magazine. So I think that senior year when I started to get exposed to, okay, I need to figure out what I want to do. I've had some experience with this. I don't want other people to feel the way I did and go through those hardships of navigating that. And I want to be able to help people. And like you said, that experience is good. So I think that, and then getting into the gym for the first time, which again took a while because I was afraid to go. I actually had signed up on my birthday. And I asked my parents, what do you want for birthday? I was like, I want a gym membership.
Oh,
Signed
that's
up in,
epic.
yeah, yeah.
Love that.
Signed up in April. I didn't go until like 6, 7 months down the line because I was
Oh,
still
wow.
just afraid to go. Right. I tried taking that first step and it was a little bit scary. And I had it. So I was like, okay, I have no excuse now, but excuses still came up. And then I found out one of my friends from high school was going to the gym. And I was like, dude, please just, can I go with you? You don't have to like train me or anything. I just need someone to walk through that door with just to get over that fear, to kind of give me that little push. And I stepped in, and from there, I'm like, okay, not scary. I love this place. And you just from there kind of falling in love with that. And again, that's when you start learning more, going through the Matt Ogus videos and navigating that, Eric Helm videos. So then in my undergrad, continuing to learn in a more formal sense, understand what that looks like. I liked it a lot, but interestingly, I just found I still learned more by listening to podcasts on the way to class because it came through a more practical lens. And that's where I really wanted to be. And I kind of made sense to me, right? Because I want to say, what does this information mean? And how can I apply it to myself and to other people? Rather than learning a lot of biology and physiology. Again, very important to know that stuff. I'm not saying it's not, but for me, I kind of really like the other stuff, the practical side of things. So with the undergrad, I was just taking all my classes. And through there, I also got into powerlifting. because at school they started a powerlifting team. I remember it was like one of the first nights where they have all the booths set up with the clubs and teams. And from afar, I just see a bench press. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like I've been in the gym for a year or two. I know what the bench press looks like. I see a bunch of people lifting on it. What is this? And I got into powerlifting, and that was cool because it's like, hey, here's a sport for it. Didn't even know that was the thing. And then understanding that, and then through there, there's a combination of getting in the gym, learning about what powerlifting was, getting some of the formal side of education. And through that, I had moved during the summer. I went to a gym that was nearby, and I found a little powerlifting crew. And through that is where I found Dr. Mike Zourdos. Because as you know now, Zourdos isn't, especially before, he wasn't on social media as much or at all, if anything, right? So like no one really knew much. And even when Eric Helms was on it, he wasn't saying too much about him. So it's hard to come across him. But that was going to be my second year of my undergrad, is where my friends just started talking about powerlifting. And they say, hey, Mike Zourdos, DUP, there's some cool stuff about it. Because my first like program iteration that I ever ran was power hypertrophy adaptive training from Lane Norton, right? So like on bodybuilding.com, seeing that and seeing him talk about Zourdos and Zourdos talk about him and finding that more specific niche of science is how I heard about Zourdos. And then I was like, wow, I didn't know, again, it was at this level. So as through my undergrad of going through that, I was coming to the face of, okay, I'm about to graduate. I have to figure out what I want to do. Definitely don't want to be an adult anymore, because I don't want to be an adult, because that's just doesn't sound fun. So let me just keep going to school. Yeah, delay that as much as I can. That's basically what I did this whole time. That's why I did the PhD, is just avoid being an adult. But yeah, I really love learning, right? So I think it just made sense to continue that path and to still learn. And when I heard about Zourdos and how I just saw how he navigated research and how he talked about it and his values, it made sense to want to learn with him, right? So I was kind of stubborn in the sense that I was like, I'm going to work with him and only him. And it worked out fantastically well, though, because it was very scary, because when I applied to all my other master's places, I heard from everywhere except FAU, which is where Zourdos was at. And I was getting scared because the other schools were like, hey, we need to know if you're coming or not. But long story short, they basically forgot to pass down one paper to the other person to say that I was accepted. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So I ended up having to say, okay, I got accepted, but it was 2 weeks before classes started. So I obviously accepted it because, again, I wanted to work with Zourdos. And I basically had to move my whole life, find a place to live within 2 weeks, go from Rhode Island to Florida and get that all sorted. But it worked out, and it worked out extra well, like I said, because that first semester was actually when Eric Helms was doing his data collection at the FAU for his PhD. So my first semester, trying to figure out things. It was my first class. I remember it was biomechanics of Zourdos. And I said, hey, it's me, the guy that was emailing you all the time over the summer, freaking out and trying to get to school. But I want to make the most of my time here at FAU. And in general, I want to learn as much. I want to be involved. What do I do? And he's like, yeah, come to the muscle lab. And I said, that sounds really cool. I don't know what that is, but that sounds cool. So I was looking for it, and I remember very vividly just trying to find where the spot was, because he gave me what the classroom number was. But as I came through the door, to the front door, it was locked or it was closed, and I hear Metallica blasting. I'm like, okay, this is obviously not a lab. It doesn't make sense. Keep walking around. I'm like, no, I think it is. Knock on the door, and Joey Carzoli opens the door. He's like, oh, hey, man, Zourdos says here they were going to come. It's just all Alico plates, barbells, Metallica's blasting, people lifting. And I'm like, oh, this is what research is. And that really just blew my mind, because I didn't know what that was. Because it was, people have this preconceived idea of what research is white coat, lab, doing stuff. And I actually had that experience too, because in my undergrad, my last year, where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, my advisor said, yeah, you should probably do some research or get involved and see what that looks like. So I volunteered to help out with one of the studies that was going on, but it was a lot of blood work and lab work that we were doing, for, like, still lifting related, but it was a lot of stuff in there. And that just bored me. I couldn't do it. I like people, like I like being hands-on. I like the practical side of things. So if that was what research was, I didn't want it. So I was hesitant at first when Zourdos said that, but still went to it, showed up. And like I said, that's where, got involved with a bunch of research projects. It was like even involved with Helms' study, doing the data collection with him. And then when masters started to end, I was like, Eric, take me with you to New Zealand for PhD, please. and same idea where, hey, I really wanted to work with him. I wanted him to be my mentor, because it's important to pick mentors who are going to be a right fit for you and are going to provide you as best as you can. And they were the perfect pick for sure.
Yeah. I saw a post, I think it was you graduating,
Oh yeah.
and Eric shared that too. And he just, the words to describe you as a student were just like, I can only imagine how that felt for yourself. Because similar to you, I look up to Eric in a big way. I think a lot of people in the industry do because of the way he presents himself and how like intellectually honest he is, and he could have sold out probably on many occasions, made way more money than he is, but we came across the muscle and strength pyramids, and he's the same Eric Helms as we've always known and loved, and so kind of that Captain America type of role model. So yeah, I can't even imagine what it was like, kind of going all the way to New Zealand. Because I mean, yeah, it's one thing taking your life within the same country, but you were willing then to go all the way to New Zealand and be with him out there. Is that where you're still situated? Or are you back in the US now?
Back in the US, yeah, in Rhode Island, in the States, yeah.
Oh,
We are
nice.
a state. We're a very small state, but we do exist. We're not part of America,
Yeah.
like some people say are.
And yeah, I think, like you say, a lot of people think lab coats, like that sort of thing, for research, full stop. They just think that's what it is. The immediate person that comes to mind is Milo Wolf because he does thumbnails in lab coats where he's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, Milo, you're perpetuating this myth now. But I think it probably helps the clicks, right? So,
Yeah.
but with that in mind, being under Mike Zourdos and Eric Helms, do you have a couple of things like when you think about Mike, when you think about Eric, do you have a couple of things that come to mind in terms of like lessons they taught you or anything like that?
Oof. There's so many. I've learned so much under both of them. But I think the one thing that just really stood out, and you kind of alluded to this, is that they're just such good human beings, right? And a lot of the times we only see them online, and even if they do show that they're great, when you see how Eric or you see how Mike interacts with the students and how much they genuinely care, that it's just even more comforting, and it's even more of a like, wow, it's special, right? And it makes you really feel like if you're their student specifically, it makes you feel loved, it makes you feel like you're important, it makes it feel like all this is really much worth it, right? And I think being in this field, we forget that it's very much a people field, right? We're working with people. Even the science, we're doing it for the people. We're not just doing it, we're not doing science on rats, specifically us. Some people do, but it's we're doing this because we care about people. We care about lifting weights. We love this thing, and we want others to share that love and excitement for it too. So that is very much shown. They show that again on social media and themselves, but in person, you just see that to the this 10th degree. And it was very nice to see that. And I think through that too, again, just learning of how to operate myself as a human being. I learned so much through that, right? With integrity and understanding, just putting people first. Um, being, and specifically for research, I think and this is for them too, being okay with being wrong, right? And in learning and growing over time, because this field's moving fast, man. It really is. Like we're learning so much at a pretty fast pace, which is exciting. But then that sometimes, things that we've said a couple of years ago, maybe we have to change because now we have more evidence or we have a different viewpoint, and that's okay. That's a good thing. And I think a lot of people don't think that's a good thing, but that was something they both very well recognize and are good at exploring, saying, hey, again, we both love this field too, so we're learning too, and that's exciting. So it's that continued desire to learn, grow the field, be good human beings along the way. Those are the things that really stuck with me amongst many others. But yeah, they're just great people.
It's so funny, actually. When I think about Mike Zourdos, he was the DUP guy for me. And there was a
Yeah,
time where DUP was it. That was vogue. Like, I don't know, length and partials is now, for example,
yeah,
probably a similar ilk. And I remember people selling programs and books like the DUP method, all of this, and reflecting upon your lesson there in terms of, hey, it's okay to be wrong. I remember Mike saying this might be the worst best we've come across, like in terms of the research. Like, yeah, it was the best outcomes we've had so far from this specific setup, but there could be way better ones to come in future. We don't know what we don't know yet. And yeah, I think just like they said and like you've said, and I've seen particularly Eric because he puts himself more on social media and you kind of hear his opinions and thoughts on things more. But he's changed his perspectives and feelings towards things. I mean, the third iteration of the muscle and strength pyramids are coming out with updates. And that's super important if you want to be a true scientist. Whereas, yeah, when people kind of put their fork in the ground on, I don't know, could be anything, right? I guess actually it happened with Mike Israetel with Team Full ROM. I think they've changed, they've kind of removed, I know it's on social media, they've renamed that account. It's like, hey, actually, that was something we thought, or I don't know, it was a bit of a joke, what have you, completely get it. But they were like, well, we don't want to be known as like Team Four. That doesn't make sense anymore with the updated research we have, where it's like, yeah, like we don't have to be like martyrs for that sort of thing. So yeah, it's great to see people updating their thoughts, and that is true like scientific thinking as well. And then having them as role models as like being great people, I kind of have tried to shape that environment like online almost. Like that's how it's almost become now because you can't have the same in-person interaction. Is that something, obviously now you're at home and I guess you're not so much like in labs or doing anything like that. What are you finding spending your time doing? And then do you miss that one-on-one interaction? I'm guessing, yeah, I don't know where you're going to now. Like what's next for Colby? I'd be interested actually.
Yeah, I do miss them. I miss the one-on-one because I like people and I like Eric and Mike a lot. They're really cool. So it's tough to be away from them. And I think what I've been doing now is mainly just, and what I'm planning on doing, at least for the foreseeable future, is diving more into the coaching and content creation side of things. Because I've been coaching for Stronger by Science for a couple of years now. I don't even know how long, but that's been fantastic. And I find that the coaching and the content stuff is just more in line with my values, right? And I have a bigger reach, I think. Not that I don't with as formal education and research, but I still love those things a lot. But I feel it's hard to get a position at a university where you can, because I just like the research side of things a lot, especially the data collection. So if I can find a position where I'm like just a research assistant, just doing data collection, fantastic. Very hard to come across just that in the States because they want you to teach, they want you to write grants, they want you to do all these other things. And I'd rather not do that. So I'll at least want to put that on pause for now and see if I can dive full into the coaching side of things because that's where I just find it's so just rewarding to again work one-on-one with people and to help people who want to be helped and who are excited about learning and growing in not only just the biceps, right, but just the knowledge too. And when someone reaches out to coaching, they come with that for the most part, and that's exciting to me. And the content stuff is still pretty new, but that's still falls in line with the idea of trying to help others. And like I said, for me, I was all over the YouTube when I was growing up and just learning through that. And I loved how that itself created a community. So similar to you and what you've been doing, I would like to do that as well. And just, get some people together who also like to nerd out about lifting and then anime and video games, whatever it is, just have a place where we can all just learn and grow together. So that's kind of what it looks like for now until or if a position opens up that I feel like I can really flourish in, that falls in line with what I want to do. And I can do both. But it's tough because I like to do a lot of things. and for now, I think I spent a lot of time with school. So for now, try the other route, see what happens and fall along that spectrum wherever or whenever it feels most appropriate.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's when you are an online coach, I guess working through Stronger by Science, you don't have to worry so much about content production because I guess in theory, they're kind of getting the clients for you, kind of similar for working for a gym versus being self-employed. Yeah. But if you are looking to go self-employed and do it yourself, then content production is part of the job basically because now we don't have a gym floor to cast our net and talk to people and be engaging and be like, hey, you're interested in coaching? You have to put yourself out there on social media. So, and there's so much time you could spend doing that, as I'm sure you've become aware of, like, hey, everything from audio, lighting, editing, long form, short form, YouTube, like TikTok, if you want to. Well, I suppose in the US, I don't know how you guys are feeling about TikTok, but so many avenues there. So I guess, yeah, it can be, I can find it overwhelming sometimes, and I have to like bring myself in, and I guess you'll find your footing and your style and how you want to present yourself. And actually, on that note, I guess it's a good time to say, if you do like this sort of format, podcasts, you have your own podcast, right? You've been running that. How have you enjoyed that?
It's been a lot of fun. If anything, it's just an excuse for me and Jake, remember, to get together and talk each week, right? So, and yeah, that was the thing. So Jake and I, it's funny, we've known each other for a long time, but we don't know each other well because we first knew each other from years ago. We were both ambassadors for De Novo Nutrition, and that's how we got to know each other. So followed each other on Instagram, and then from there, just kind of always sending a like through the videos or the pictures and using each other's codes or something, right? And then as things went on and I was going through my path, Jake saw that and he was like, dude, that's really cool. I would love to work with Zourdos too. And we started to talk more through there. And that's kind of how he was able to get in and to the science footing thing and just get more involved there. So we found out pretty quickly, like, hey, we're similar people. We have similar interests, values, especially. And it's like got to the point where we talked recently and it was like, hey, we should do something in some capacity. Like, I would just love to work with you more and be with that. And from there, yeah, podcast started. So it's just us. It's called the Training Arc. Of course, you got to throw in that anime reference in there because again, we love that, but we wanted to make it part of the identity as sorts of as well. Because right, we learn so much through anime and video games as well, and that's a part of who we are. And a lot of people who are into lifting weights kind of find themselves there too, as you do. And it's just we wanted to again create that community, say, hey, place where we can all just get together, nerd out, have fun, lift weights, and specifically us on the podcast, just talking about stuff and specifically coming through a practical lens. We'll talk about research every now and then, but it's not super heavy on research because while that's cool and we can do that, I think it helps less people, right? It's like you're talking to very specific people about when you're looking at certain things. And we want to make it a little bit more open to anyone. Again, you don't even have to even like anime. You could just listen to the podcast because you like to listen to us talk about science stuff or practical program design, whatever it is, right? So I think it's just, that's been a lot of fun. It's cool because we can do that and put it out there. And it's been, we haven't even looked at metric stuff. We're kind of just doing it because we're enjoying it. I think that's important, especially early on, like you said, just to find that and do that. So yeah, I'm enjoying that.
Yeah, dude. On the metrics and things, you can get so lost on chasing various things like whatever it is, likes, follows, like whatever it is. And for a lot of us, it's obviously you want to reach a lot of people, but you also want to drive like clients, what have you, coaching, because that puts food on the table. And you also want to help people because you're a great coach. So sometimes the things that drive them aren't the same as what drives like the likes and engagement, right? So you can kind of get a bit lost if you're not careful. And I've been listening to it, and I do like the laid back. Like I like a mix. Like I like getting into research and things, but some of it goes over my head because I'm not educated in that field to the level that these guys are. So if they don't put it really simply, I'm not going to be able to take it in. And then, so it's nice to have like some more relaxed conversations. And I do the same one here where this is a bit more relaxed. We're going to talk about some research, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But sometimes we do deep dives into research. Sometimes it gets a bit scaled back to being a bit more kind of just easy listens. And importantly, like to bring in the practical too. So I love that you guys are doing that. I think I said I've listened to a few and I enjoy, like I relate to you guys, anime, lifting, like I enjoy it. So I think there'll be people listening who will go check it out and similarly kind of get to know you guys a little bit more. And obviously Jake's been on the podcast a few times, so people will be more than aware of him. On the topic of research then, it's a good time to kind of dive into that. So you've done, if people don't know, they might have seen your last name on some papers, but you've done a variety of research and you've been on a variety of research papers from surplus size, which was fairly recent. Eric Helms kind of headed that one up, to accuracy of kind of reps in reserve. In terms of not like a specific paper, but being involved in research, is there, what are some insights you have gained that you couldn't have gained without being involved, if there are any?
Yeah, research is tough. I'm not saying that either to like complain too, but it's tough both for the people doing the research, but also the participants. And I think that's why we sometimes struggle to get participants because we ask a lot and we know that, right? We're saying, hey, for the next 8 weeks, you're going to stop your own training and you're going to do what we tell you to do. And that might mean doing only 6 sets of biceps instead of your 20. And that's tough. And I think when you're on the other side and you're conducting research, you appreciate it more and you understand that, hey, it is tough to do and it's tough to do well. And that struggle, a lot of people don't see that struggle, right? Because that internal struggle, okay, should I do it this way? It would be a little bit less, practical, but it's going to be feasible for the participants, or like, am I searching for this? There's so many things that go through it rather than, hey, here's our conclusion at the end. And I think people miss that. So I think there's that aspect, but specifically, I think research is such a fantastic opportunity for both the researcher and the participant, right? You get this as a researcher, you get the opportunity to open up the door to what research is for someone who might not know what it is, right? Sometimes we get participants who they just see our flyer up at the gym and they're like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. What's that? And they don't know really what research is. So there's a great chance to say, hey, look at all the cool stuff we can do. Like we're just pushing the field forward by learning. We're testing things out. And like, again, it's fun. When we're doing training studies, especially, it's fun. And I think that's something I want to remind other researchers, if they're listening, and just in general, people have the idea of when people are giving your time like the participants do, you should be really thankful for that, right? And you should create an environment where they want to come back, where they are excited to be there for the sessions, even if they're brutal, going to failure every set kind of sessions, right? it's such a special place. And I think I really valued my time working with those participants, and I'm grateful for their efforts and all that. And it's just a lot of them are like my best friends now. And that's so cool. I lived with them, when I was in New Zealand, because again, people who offer their time and energy for research is a very special type of people. And from there, you just kind of connect really well. And it's, yeah, I think it's such a great opportunity. So even if you don't know much about research, or you're just kind of have an idea with it, a great way to get involved more is to be a participant. I'm not doing this to like chill out and say, like, oh, get participants more, but just keeping an eye out, right? Because you never know. I think that can be a really cool avenue. But research is fun. It is special. It is an important thing. So I think that kind of insight people don't get to see. They just see the paper at the end and they look at the conclusion mainly, and then they just kind of take away what they want with it, rather than appreciating it for the work that comes in it. And just the idea of it's just another piece of info that gets into the realm that we can then synthesize with everything else, right? Not that, hey, we're doing this just to get a bunch of clicks to figure out that we're saying that this is correct and this is the only way. Like, it's weird now that we have to kind of consider how social media is going to interpret stuff when we're conducting research. So that's different, but we don't want to lose our sight of what research really is and kind of lose the values of that, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of like a extra layer of peer review in a sense,
Yeah.
right? You're going to get some figureheads in the kind of fitness space who are like not necessarily involved with research, but involved themselves with the research and use it. So then they're going to be looking at your studies in a certain way, and they hope certain things are done. But if they're not conducting research, I can imagine that they don't understand some of the logistical things involved. It makes me, you mentioned optimal, and a lot of people think optimal is like perfect, and it's like this thing that we can definitely achieve. But it's like that optimal is kind of individual, person to person, and similar here in your research. Like, you have to somewhat cater it to the people that you're getting in and the constraints that you have involved, whether that be like the machines you have available, or again the participants availability, that sort of like, I guess something I'm aware of, at least to some extent, is like female participants can be a little bit more complicated because of the monthly menstrual cycle. So for some research, that makes them a bit harder to get involved to some extent, and people just, when you say it, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But before that, but the thing I didn't expect you to say was that it's fun, which I like, because I actually never really consider, when I think of research, I kind of think, oh, it's a bit like your job, and maybe you don't, and it makes sense, you enjoy it, you would like to do more research, so actually you find that fun. And whenever, actually, it's interesting, when I've trained with Pac and Milo, I've trained with Milo a couple of times, and I trained with Pac a few weeks ago, and I kind of felt like a research participant because I've seen some of their videos and things, and like they basically, from my understanding, is you get a free PT workout basically. Like, you get a personal trainer, you get your like PhD candidates, some of the smartest people, to take you through a workout. So if you frame it like that, like, you get to have sessions on, like, I don't know, a workout program by Brad Schoenfeld, like something like this. I might get some people through the door, though probably people are kind of already interested.
And a lot of times, yeah, it's I specifically love data collection itself. Some people don't. Like Jake is more like, I like just doing the writing side of things a little bit more than the data collection. So it's different from person to person. But for me, like you said, it is very much a training session. Like, especially if it's a training study, a lot of times you're showing up and we're just having a fun session together, right? We're creating a friendship because we're going to be with each other for the next 8 weeks. Like, we should talk a little bit, right? And all that. So it is fun. And I think, yeah, a lot of times, like you said, you get free session, free 8 weeks. And a lot of times, because people are giving so much to us, we offer a lot back too. So I'll write up programs for people too, as like a thank you, or do some coaching for that sense, and outside of the study itself. So there's so much to gain from both parties, right? And I think, again, bringing it back to the idea that it is fun is so important. And I try to make it that way, both when I speak about it and then when people come in, just so it's a good time for everyone, while still keeping a high standard and quality of research too, right? I think that's tough to do. But we've gotten really good at that at our labs. Okay, it's time to put in work, or when to joke, when to be serious, and still hold a high standard and stuff. And that's can be difficult, but it's part of it, and we like that.
I actually really like that because it relates to my coaching philosophy big time, where I think, again, people think of coaching, it's just like X's and O's and whatever, but I really like the personal side to it. And like, I want to leave every time a client, first of all, I want clients to look forward to their check-in, not dread it and it be homework. That kind of can be challenging, probably similar to that. You're kind of what you're talking about. But then when they have their check-in and they leave it, I want them to feel like pumped. Like, I'm not a cheerleader, like I'm never going to be that, but still, like, I want to leave them feeling motivated and driven, because ultimately that's going to lead to better results and outcomes. And adherence, similar to like
Yeah.
people showing up to the lab. Like if you guys are like, boring and you don't make it fun, you're gonna have a lot more dropouts probably.
Yeah, and the cool thing is too, we've gotten a lot of people once people see how it is, and especially if you create an environment like that, you get people coming back to do research. Oh, let me
Nice.
know when the next study comes back up. And you're like, yeah, this is exciting. This is great. And that's such a cool thing. Yeah, again, people just don't realize that. So it's good to bring that to light.
That's great. Yeah. Out of the studies you've done, do you have a favorite? And do you have any kind of like
Mhm.
particular, or I guess, has any been your favorite? And has there been any study that you've done where you've got like some really insightful practical take homes that have kind of changed the way that you might do things, or at least nudged you in a direction that you weren't expecting?
I think I think the favorite and the most practical one is probably the same, and it was the recent surplus study. Because it was the most fun, but it was the most difficult. Took a long time to do because it happened during COVID time. When I first arrived there, they already went through maybe two participants, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to get involved. That sounds great. I love training studies. This is good." And then COVID just destroyed us. It was so hard because our COVID was you can't go anywhere but the grocery store, and that was for a long time. And then even after that, it was a struggle because people were just catching up with their own lives still, or they were just worried about any other sickness. It was tough. So I think that was a challenge, but that challenge itself was very rewarding when we got to the finish line, right? To be like, hey, we did it. And we still uphold the standard and did it well and did as best as we could, especially with the cards that we were dealt. And the study itself was just really cool, right? I think there's a lot of practical things that we can get from it. Like the main one being, of course, you don't need to be in the dreamer bulk of 15% surplus. And that's was maybe a little bit obvious, but now we have some data to be like, okay, we probably don't want to, right? And I think that was cool. But my favorite thing about the study was just the utility of maintenance phases, right? I think a lot of times we get the ideas of you need to bulk and cut, but it doesn't always have to be that way. And then now that sometimes that leads to the debate of, oh, bulking is dead. That's not necessarily true because most of the time, 5% surplus is probably going to be good for most people, especially if you're more advanced when you want to ensure we're trying to recover as best as we can and puts down some new tissue. So it's like, 5% is still beneficial, right? It's not, we didn't just compare 0 versus 15. The 5% was there and it was very good. But I think practically a maintenance phase is beneficial for a lot of people. It could be either, just spending time not dieting, right? If you're using it as a time to be in a better position down the line, right? Because maybe you have someone who's maybe more overweight, they go through an extended dieting phase, they're pretty fatigued, and like, hey, I don't know what to do. I still want to lose weight, or like, where should I be? We can go through a maintenance phase and still be in a very beneficial spot, right? Just kind of refill. It's almost like a diet break in a sense, right? And using that to our benefit. Or on the other side, if you're gaining and you're just sick of pounding food all the time, taking a break and being in a maintenance phase is still very beneficial too, right? Because we're still seeing good results being in a maintenance. It's more of the idea of just not dieting so frequently, right? So I think using that has been good for clients, for myself, being okay with that, right? I think in that itself is a skill to practice of being in good maintenance. So we can use that to our benefit of practicing that, of getting some more data on what that looks like, what calories look like, macro splits if we want to try out with. So there's a lot of practical stuff there from that study. And I think it was really cool to be involved with that. And yeah, just proud of all the work that we were able to do.
Yeah, I think that study was great because before that, didn't really have any well
Mm,
conducted studies on energy surplus for muscle gain in trained lifters, specifically like just lifting. Then we didn't have that, so it was yeah we had like Darth, which was used very often, and it just wasn't the best, most kind of comparative or ecologically valid to the people that are trying to use it. So I really enjoyed it, and what you have to forgive me if I'm wrong, and you might not remember this, but maybe you will. I think because I found it very interesting because you talked about like it's a fine line of being in too much of a surplus or not enough and tracking that weight. Didn't two of the groups who are aiming for a different surplus end up at the same kind of surplus in the end, where they gained a very similar amount of weight? Don't worry if
it
you can't remember, but I remember seeing something like that.
it not 100% sure. I just know if even if they did, it would be different ratio of fat to muscle mass. Like usually,
Okay.
basically, those were in the 15 gained quite a bit of fat pretty quickly, right? Because I've had some friends who were like, "I'm pounding 5,000 calories. Please help." Because so I'm not
Yeah, it's a lot.
100% sure, but I think it was along those lines.
And it is that sense of, because, and I know Eric or the conclusions from that to some extent were like the greater your muscle gain potential, probably the faster rate of gain you want to have. But it's that at the same time, you're the more likely you are to gain muscle, the more likely you can gain muscle just at maintenance and kind of even potentially recomp. Whereas when you're advanced, basically you're screwed if you do, if you don't, because it's like, well, you
Yeah.
probably benefit from the surplus the most, but you'll probably put on fat the easiest out of everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of the thing that paper did for me in particular was being okay with maintenance and being like, hey, if I've maintained weight for 2, maybe even 3 weeks, so long as training is going well, don't like you don't have to jump 100 calories every time you have a week of maintenance. That'll probably lead to exponential and excessive fat gaining, cut your gaining phase short. So it allowed me to be like, really emphasize that long and slow and time at maintenance is not time wasted. That helped a lot for me. So I appreciate your work on that.
Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure. And yeah, I think with that, and for me, a lot of clients I've worked with, the way I framed it and use it in some good ways was, we get off the dieting phase and they feel like they want to or need to be in a gaining phase because like, hey, I want to build muscle. So it's like, oh no, like we could still build muscle and be good in a maintenance phase. And they're like, really? It's like, yeah, this paper, obviously it's just one paper, but it pushes us in a direction. And if anything, we'll just try it out and see what happens, right? And collect data on you as the individual. And from there, interpret what that means. And it's just going to put us in a better position down the line to go through another dieting phase rather than have to lose a lot more down the line. So it's like that positioning thing is really beneficial.
And obviously, bulking is dead is kind of in vogue. I'm not entirely
Yeah.
sure why. It's probably part down to main gaining from Greg Doucette,
Yeah.
which actually main gaining, when if I think about that as a term of how I interpret it, is like gaining very slowly. Like you're kind of
Yeah.
it's main gaining. It's not like trying to hold maintenance. But I found that funny because I'm like, hey, we literally have your paper which shows if you want to optimize muscle growth, a slight surplus is better than maintenance. So it's like I'm scratching my head trying to work out where people are trying to say you don't ever like to optimize muscle growth. You don't have to be in a surplus, but hey, you know what
That's how the social
happens.
media works. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, talking about kind of gaining in different phases and things like this, I believe you're in a diet phase at the moment and actually preparing this year for your first bodybuilding prep.
Yep.
So I'd
Yeah.
love to hear a little bit about, yeah, what brought you here now to that point? Why this year? I guess because probably you're out of your PhD. That's probably a big why. But also, yeah, how that's all going, what your thought processes is, where you are right now, when you're
Yeah.
looking to compete.
Yeah. So it is this year. It's gonna be the first one. It's extremely exciting, but also very nerve-wracking. And I think the main reason why I want to and got here was I first off always loved lifting. I started off, like I said, just mainly like body comp stuff. Then I got into powerlifting. But when I got into the powerlifting, I missed the bodybuilding stuff and just the muscle growth and that idea. So I think I only really started to kind of going maximal hypertrophy focus like 3 years ago. So that's exciting, focusing on building muscle, exercise selection is very much in line with that, and just being mindful of all those considerations. So it's diving into that has been extremely fun. I love the long game. I love the idea of the delayed gratification and all that. So for me, like that's what bodybuilding is, right? And that's exciting. In the huge challenges is even more exciting for me, right? I want to see what my limits are, what walls I face, how to overcome those, the personal growth and development that comes along with all that. That's just all extremely exciting to me, right? And even more so because I'm in the field, so I could actually put the knowledge to practice and see what it looks like, both for myself and then, like we talked a little bit earlier, so I can understand what it's like to go through prep, so I can have a better indicator of how to coach others through it. So there's a lot of things through there that'll kind of push me and motivate me to that. It is still scary. I think scary because it's the first time, obviously, and it's just going to be new. And especially with my background, I've never really been lean. So it's going to be interesting to navigate that space and what that looks like. And it's like, even now, like you said, I'm finishing up like a mini cut. So I got about a week left. But even now, I'm kind of like the leanest and most muscular I've ever been, which is cool. And I'm still so far away of where I need to be. But with that, and meaning that in a good way, not like, oh, I'm scared. So it's cool because I caught on into the idea of delayed gratification really early when I spent a lot of time far away from like a level of body weight and body fat that was comfortable. I spent a lot of time being more heavy, and this is even outside of like when I was younger, right? Like my past couple of years of training, I was around like 90 kilos on average, which is I'm like 5'8". I'm pretty short. Like I shouldn't really be 90, but in my mind is one of those things where, hey, especially if I'm just transitioning to more bodybuilding focus, let me maximize my muscle building potential at this time and just train really hard, recover really well, especially, going through the PhD and all this other stuff. Dieting is feasible, but I'm not Jake. Jake is fantastic. He can do that. I didn't want to do that. I was like, okay, let me spend time here and spend time being a little uncomfortable with the body weight, but putting me in a better position years down the line so that when it happens, I, have muscle to show when I diet down and all that. So that was cool to get there. So now it's like I said, getting to these new phases of body fat and weight that are very new. So that's exciting and that's cool. I'm like, oh, this 90 is better than last 90, better than the last one. And even now I'm like 82. I'm like, last time I was 82 was like 7 years ago, kilos. And I was like, damn, this is cool. And it's completely different. So that's exciting. And yeah, I'm aiming for end of October, early November shows. So still a good amount of time. Like I said, doing kind of like this pre-prep stuff right now. It's again a better position to then go to that extended phase diet. We'll probably be pretty long, like 24, 28 weeks, maybe longer, depending on how the check-in goes and we see where we're at. Because like I said, don't really know. Kind of figuring out what I look like and anticipating some hurdles. But yeah, it's exciting. I love the idea of bodybuilding and I'm excited to go through it. And yeah, just looking forward to it.
It's a great perspective to have, and you're obviously going into it with so much more knowledge and awareness than a lot of people. But it is that actually it's great for you because, like you said, it's one thing reading about it, hearing about it, learning about it in textbooks, but then going through it and like practically, how does this feel? How would I go about it? And then you have that skill and tool set to pass on to clients because you've kind of been there, done that. Although it's obviously different for everyone. But the first time is always an interesting time. I actually end up working with a lot of first timers, and yeah, I find myself needing to kind of what's it called? Say yes, we're on track. It's okay. This sort of thing, quite a bit, and that's fine. Like I'm happy I can be here and be that kind of guiding light in a sense because sometimes you don't know. It's like any destination. If you haven't traveled there before, you don't know if like you're on time or have you. Like you have somewhat of probably a body weight in mind, but your look is what you're going for, and you don't know what's appropriate at various times. So it sounds like you might be navigating that with a coach, or are you doing it self-coached?
It's mainly been me, but especially now that we're starting dieting and prep, I'm gonna have Eric help me out and like just kind of mainly
Nice.
oversee it and just do that collaborative thing. But especially with the prep stuff, he'll be taking over and getting his insight. So that helps me a lot mentally because he knows me really well. He knows where I like how my mind works, how I think,
Yeah.
how maybe I overthink on certain things. So he knows how to speak to me, how to navigate that. So that's extremely helpful, and I'm grateful for that. So that's gonna be cool. And yeah, the competing is something I've always wanted to do, but it was just respecting the game of bodybuilding and respecting myself and knowing that doing it when it's most appropriate, when the stage is always going to be there, when I'm ready for it, I'm most ready for it because I'll never feel like I'm ready for it. I got to that
Yeah.
point where like maybe I'll put in another year putting on muscle and we'll go, but this is the year for it because like I said, just finished school, not fully into other things just yet, and I really want to, and it feels right, and I've like earned it. Right, went through those dieting phases a couple of times, feel like I'm in a good position, failed a little bit here, failed a little bit there, learn from those better tools. So it feels like it's good. And then with Eric on board, it's like feel very good about it. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, and for the listeners, like some people will be thinking, oh, they want to step on stage, but they never feel ready. And
yeah.
so your example is a great one where life is in a good position, not high stress. I put in my due diligence of building some muscle, but I'm not over fat. Like I'm setting myself up well. I have good knowledge of how to go through these kind of phases, and I'm excited to learn about the journey. And I'm not focused on the outcome. I guess you probably have no expectations in terms of outcomes and things like that. You're just, hey,
Just
let's put my best foot
learn.
forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Bring my best package, whatever that looks like. Don't even know what that means, but just like, do my best, be excited for making it there, learn as much as I can. Cause like it's as weird as it sounds, I'm so excited for the off season because I know how
Oh wow,
much I'm
okay,
gonna
yeah,
learn from that, right? It's like, oh, I can't wait. Like once I get the first year nerves out in the first year, like once I get in the game, I'm excited because now I have even more idea of what to look for. I know I can focus on this, prioritize this. I did good here. I could probably improve here. So it's like that's exciting. I'm obviously not using that and trying to minimize what I'm doing right now and looking at it. I'm still very much in it, but that's exciting to know that I'm basically coming out winning, regardless of placement, regardless of outcome, anything. It's just I'm gonna win.
yeah. No, completely. It's there's nothing like a comp prep, like the life skills you develop and the
Yeah.
determination. You're like, if I can train this hard and be this diligent when I'm so tired and fatigued and hungry, man, I can really nail like a small surplus in an off season, for example. My diligence can be better there. And man, that's going to make such a difference because I won't have to diet as much and whatever. So, yeah, it's interesting. I do hear people kind of debate whether or not competing takes, like, obviously it's not optimal for muscle growth, but in the long run, if you don't compete too often, I wonder if that can propel better results because you kind of gain this momentum and fire from an extra diligence that prep can bring. So yeah, I'm excited for you to go through that. And you've even been to shows before, right? Because I saw you at
Yeah.
Worlds. I don't know if you've been to any other shows, but
That was
hardly
my
came
first
to
one.
Worlds.
That was my first one.
Oh wow, so you
So
really
that
went in at
was,
like high
yeah,
level.
yeah, because it was only like an hour, hour and a half away, and I've always wanted to, especially with thinking about competing next year. I'm like, I want to see what the highest caliber is, right, and see what I'm working with, and get some idea of some motivation and see all that, and see you, of course, and everyone else. So it was, man, it was so cool. I was in awe. I was taking notes too because like, oh, this is so cool. Like practice your posing. It's so important. Oh man, you're up there for 45 minutes. It was like for me that helped me be invested a little bit more. But it was, yeah, it was awesome. It was great to see again the high caliber of athletes. Even better to see how great humans people were, right? Like talking to you briefly, talking to Alberto Nunez, talking to Dirk after his competition, just seeing like these are real people too, and they're fantastic people even more so. And it's just, yeah. So that was the first time seeing it. So now that definitely has fueled me up a lot, and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel bad because I meant to say this to you. I might as well say it to you on air, but I only caught you when I was like waiting for my tan and on show
Yeah,
day. And so I was like not in the mindset of chatty Steve. I was like,
100%.
I wanted to like I find myself sometimes I want to divert and just be chatty and just like chill with people, but then I'm like, no, you need to stay on track and on target. Like, don't forget that. So I'm like battling in my own head, and I didn't catch you post after I'd been off stage because then I was like chilled and then we would have
Yeah,
had a nice a proper chat. So I feel bad
yeah,
that we didn't manage to have
dude,
that, but I
no
appreciate
worries
just
at
being able to
all.
say hi to you that day.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I wasn't gonna let you talk because all right, you need to get in the zone. I was like, hey, Steve, it's me. Hey, nice to see you. Bye. So I wanted to say, hey, I was here, but you got to focus and do your thing. So I totally understand.
Yeah, yeah, it's a funny. Yeah, it's you do have to be careful on show days, like with time, like you get some of the practical insights there, like you
Yeah,
said, posing on stage, and you can see. Well, I suppose you saw mostly very, very polished, good posing, but
yeah.
sometimes you see people breaking down. They haven't got the endurance.
Hmm.
You get some of those again practical insights that you don't get when you just think, oh yeah, you just get a tan and jump on stage and it all runs smoothly like clockwork. Like you warm up, you like for a workout, you just pump up and go on stage. It's like, well, I know I was backstage for like 2 hours rating to like, am I pumping up? Am I not? Like, what's going on? So
The
yeah,
mental games too that play, like when you're on stage fighting for elbow room and how that can affect you. These things like you don't really think about unless you actually see it, and it's like, oh, okay, they're small, but all the small things can add up, especially on a day that you're kind of freaking out because it's the day of competition, right? So it's
yeah.
if you can be as prepared as you can, then I think that's helpful.
Are you going to be documenting your journey at all? Like, I guess you're going to be on the podcast talking about it, but have you got anything else planned?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how I want it to look yet. I think that's kind of the theme of me getting into the content. I'm not too sure of how I want to look like it, right? So
Weekly
I
nudes.
Yeah, dude, I only just posted up like a video of me doing some lifting stuff yesterday for the first time because I was like afraid to put up stuff
I did
because
see that.
it's, yeah, because it's that idea. It's a little bit of like what people think about, but like I don't care too much. And then most of it I have clothes on anyway. Like I don't like to show my body too much just yet, but that's gonna be something I'll have to adventure into, which is exciting, a little scary, but I think it's cool to document that as well. I'm saying like, hey, like I normally don't do this, but this isn't just who I am, and this is why I'm putting these pictures. Here's me at 100 kilos, which you should never be at, which is probably coming at some point. But it's like I want it to be an experience where people can really learn for. I want it to be authentic. I want it to be, again, valuable for people. And I think that is what I've come to realize is even if it's a little scary or I don't know exactly what I want to do, I should be doing something because it's going to be there. So I'm slowly getting there, just putting some stuff out and navigating that. And I have some ideas, and it's just like a combination of whichever seems most appropriate to. So
Yeah.
it'll be there, but
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, people listening, hopefully, therefore, are now sold on following whatever is to come from you because
yeah.
I love following people's preps and when they document it and disclose that sort of stuff, the highs, the lows, and physique updates and everything like that, and seeing their physique slowly change. I like just being there to be part of that community and everything. So I'd love whatever you're going to be doing on that front. But it's funny, I don't know if any part of you not sharing is like imposter syndrome based, but even I'm getting
Yeah. Oh
better, but I
yeah.
still find myself getting it. Even like some of my training now, I put it up and I'm like, oh man, people are going to be critical because I'm doing some real partial chest press and things like this. I'm like, I've actually finally got to the point where I'm just like, you know what? I'm so just don't care because I've been in this game so long and I know myself. I know like I've produced results that I should not have this. But if you're just putting content, like I've been putting content out for like over 10 years now, whereas now is like you're just getting into that foray, it can be hard, but
Yeah.
you build and develop thick skin and know what to care about.
It's an interesting one because I'm not so concerned of what others think. It's more of like I hold myself to a really high standard, which is sometimes to a fault, right? So I think that's the thing. Like, okay, I want to make sure the quality is good, or like I'm representing Strong by Science or Helms and all these people behind me. Like I want to do them proud too. So maybe I'm putting a little bit too much pressure on myself in that sense. So it's cool to tackle that, right? And
Yeah.
tackle what that looks like. So it's a little bit of either because, and that's why sometimes my posts or some of them, I do it every now and then one that's like really like a funny skit or I'm just acting kind of dumb in some of the instances so that I really dive in the deep end. Cool. I don't care if people like this is just who I am. I can act funny. Like that's I don't care if people dislike that. But for me, that'll mean I'll attract people who are similar, right? It's about, being authentic and attracting more authentic people. So I've gotten over that part, I think, for the most part. It's still new because it's new in social media realm, but it's different. So I just got to do it, basically.
For sure. Yeah, it's that kind of experience cures that anxiety or discomfort with it all. And I guess on being authentic, as a final question to close on, clearly, if people aren't watching, then if you are watching, you can see the background. You're clearly a weeb. And we've got Pikachu on the bed sheets there, or we've got
This
Charmander, and yeah, we've got the
Zelda.
OGs, which I love. And I mean in that best way because obviously
Yeah.
I'm also pretty much, I mean, I'm covered in tattoos, which are anime. If people aren't watching anime, if they don't read manga and they just are completely clueless, like why do these guys like this? What comes to mind when you think about anime and what it's given you? For example, for me at least, I come back to Naruto and I think of Data Boyo. That's just what
Yeah.
comes to mind because it actually really irritated me how often he was saying it, and then I kind of Googled what it meant, and I was like, I kind of like that. And so I kind of
Yeah.
took it from him. So it's become like a bit of a mantra for me. So yeah, I'd love to hear for you kind of, yeah, what's anime giving you? What's one of the things that comes to mind?
Finally, we get to talk about the good stuff. And just kidding. Yeah, I love anime and video games and all that. And I think specifically the anime is just the character development side of things, right? Like going through this journey. It's a long journey. Sometimes it's 720 episode journey like Naruto, right? But it's through all that, the trials and tribulations and just facing uncertainty, facing doubt, overcoming all that, right? It's just that constant growth and that constant desire to be better and the pursuit of progress. And anime does a really good job of showcasing that and making it relatable, right? Because I think because it's not Ryan Reynolds playing a character. You're like, I can't be Ryan Reynolds. It's an animated character. You feel a little bit more related to it, and they have more room to make it relatable. And I think it's so good and it really captures that. And there's a lot of people in the lifting realm who like anime, and I think that's a lot of it to it. That'd be a cool thing to study of the whys behind why people do that. So I think that pursuit of progress is the main thing that I really am attracted to, and it is very motivating. It does give a lot of hope. It does give something to always rely back on, and that's why I have so much art and stuff in my room because each piece is like, okay, this character went through all this. That's why it's meaningful, impactful to me. And I see certain things, I say certain phrases like that, right? It's just very integral to the development of humans and specifically for me. So I really am attracted to that. Yeah.
I also love the artwork. That's why I ended up
It's
getting the tattoos, partly
yeah.
the meaning and everything like that. But just I freaking loved it. So I love all the photos and
It's
everything. I have
yeah.
similarly like some artwork behind me because I just love it. And so I'm guessing you're into Dragon Ball Z as well in terms of
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's like Vegeta character development, kind of beating themselves up, getting stronger.
Yeah, it's maybe a slight hot take, but it's not that like Dragon Ball inherently is not necessarily a good show if you look at it overall, but it's so powerful in how it changed anime, but people everyone sees Dragon Ball because they see that idea of just being stronger and facing these challenges and always being better and improving. That's so important, and it changed a lot of people and it changed a lot of anime. So it's like you always have a spot for that, right? Even
Yeah.
if it's not like your top anime, but it's always important and special in that realm. And it's of course you gotta love it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, as a final question, What are you watching right now? If yeah, and then do you have a favorite, like a top three?
Hmm. Right now, I'm watching. So I always like to watch newer stuff with one older one. So I'm
Good way to do
watching,
it.
yeah, an older one. I'm watching Soul Eater. So I'm
Okay.
really liking that. I'm about halfway through. Very good. For the newer stuff, just getting finally into uh Sakamoto Days. So that's really cool. It's like Spy Family, but more action. Right. So there's that. Soul Leveling season 2 getting into. So
I
right
need
now,
to watch
those,
some.
those are the two, yeah, those are the two newer ones, and then Soul Eater as the older one. Uh, there's just so much to watch, which is a good thing, but it'll come with time.
So
And
much.
yeah, favorites. I had to pick one all-time favorite. I would say Hunter x Hunter. It's too
I'm
good.
rewatching that now.
I'm due for a rewatch for sure. That one's so good. One that is not often said and people don't really know about is Magi. So that I love Magi. It was on Netflix the first two seasons for a while, but they never had a third season, so I had to read the manga for it. But it was one that just, I think, it does character development so well. It does storytelling extremely well. It's just great, and it really resonated with me. It was like one of the first-ish ones that I watched, like third or something like that. And then another one, not so well known for top three, Ranking of Kings. I love. Have you seen it?
I haven't.
It's
I'm a bit like I've done like lots of the popular anime, so I haven't gone
yeah,
like
so
into like the more fringe stuff. So I need, at some point I
yeah.
will.
Ranking of Kings, I think, is phenomenal because it's such a feel good one. It's still some action and stuff with it, but this is a character development at the top level. It's about overcoming challenges, I think, at the top level, but in such a different style from traditional shonens, where it's like the high school student does their thing, and it does it. Yeah, it's just phenomenal. A lot of crying, but in a good way. A lot of I feel like so motivated by that. So I would highly recommend it. I think you would enjoy
Yes.
it a lot. Yeah.
The animes, I mean, I will end up crying and feeling emotional at animes more than I will at like general TV shows for the reasons you kind of
Yes.
mentioned
Yeah.
before. So I love it when I get those feelings. That's what like buys me into
Oh,
animes. So
right after this episode, just go watch it. Just start off
yeah, that's for sure. And
crying.
yeah, I guess on that note, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great chat, and I'm sure we'll have many more in future. We'll probably get an update on your prep and any bits and pieces you're doing on your end. But if people want to follow along, you mentioned your podcast, and obviously I follow you on Instagram. But
Yeah.
if you're anywhere else, where should people head?
Mainly Instagram. That's where we'll post everything. So just Colby period Sousa. That probably will be in the notes too. But yeah, that's where you'll find everything, even just podcast related. Because Jake and I do it on our Instagram separately, but we then post it on like the Training Arc podcast on YouTube and Spotify or wherever you listen to it. So like, yeah, that's the main thing. Just follow on the Instagram. That's where you see all the stuff.
Perfect, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you again, Colby, and we'll catch you soon. Take care.